I have no external microphone, so I should have maybe thought about that. So if you have a question after in the session, maybe you can come closer to the computer and discuss with Jonathan, group by group, of course, and with us. But if you have a question, you ask it, and I will repeat it close to the computer.
Okay, great. So thank you. So first, good morning, everybody. I hope everything is doing well here at Nancy, and that you are having a great time with Bertrand and Salman. I am very happy to be with you remotely. So I hope this lesson will be of some interest for you. So first of all, I will share my screen. Yes, I just wanted to say that the lesson is available on the GitHub of Bertrand. But I think Bertrand, you already told them that they have all the material on your GitHub, no?
Yeah.
Okay.
So everything is available already on the webpage.
So there's the PDF of this presentation. Okay. So you can find the PDF that you will see right now. Okay, this one is available on the GitHub of Bertrand Cornelis, and there is also the previous recording of this lesson that was given last year. And I will then, as I am recording now, after that I will post the new video for you. Okay, so we will talk for about 1 hour about an introduction to forecasting. So the learning objectives of this lecture are first to understand the context of forecasting in the application of renewable energy, then to understand and to know how to produce deterministic forecasts, so that are also called point forecasts. And of course, if you can produce point forecast, it is interesting to be able to perform some verification of this forecast. Of not good quality, there may be some problems. So, but you have to ask yourself what is the quality of some forecast. So maybe we'll have to define some metrics. So we will go through this learning objective during this lesson. And I think that if you have any question, then well, I can answer after that, or maybe we will do a short break during the presentation. I don't know, we can adapt. So first of all, the forecasting context. So why are we doing forecasting? In fact, forecasting is a natural step for decision making. We don't do forecast just for forecasting. And for instance, when you are watching the news, and if you want to know what will be the weather tomorrow, it is not just to know what will be the weather of tomorrow. It is to take some decision, because maybe if it is sunny, that maybe you will make some activity, and if it is, there is a lot of rain, it will be different, and so on. So it helps making decision. And also it makes us more confident about it, because sometimes you take a decision under uncertainty, and if you have some reliable forecast, maybe you will be more confident about your decision. And in fact, forecasting is used in many areas. So of course in energy, but also in finance, economics, for the weather and climate, etc. So forecasting is used in almost every area. But for this week, you focus on the energy sector. So we will focus on forecasting for the energy sector. And just first, let's get a big view of the energy sector. You have the energy producer. So you could have some coal plant or gas plant producer, but also renewable energy, PV, wind generation, and so on. They all produce some energy, so for instance, electricity. This electricity is sent to the grid. And so to the grid, you have the transmission system operator, TSO, or the distribution system operator, DSO, that will transport or distribute this electricity from the producer to the consumers. And the consumers, they can be a residential consumer. So the residential consumer, it is usually me. We are residential consumers, we are small consumers. And you have also the industrial consumers, so for instance, big industry, company, etc. And so the electricity comes from the producer and goes to the consumers. And between them, you have the energy supplier and the energy market. So you have all of these actors in the energy sector. So what are we going to forecast? In fact, it depends. It depends on the needs for each participant. For instance, if you take into consideration the energy suppliers or the transmission system operator or distribution system operator, you could be interested in forecasting the electric load. Because, for instance, if you are an energy supplier, you need to have some reliable forecast of your consumptions, of your consumers, to buy the electricity, for instance. If you are, for instance, an actor of the energy market, you are interested in forecasting the day-ahead prices. Because if you want to make some money, you need to be able to forecast the day-ahead prices. If you are an energy supplier or distribution system operator, you can be also interested in forecasting the imbalance volume to balance the grid, and so on. So it completely, in fact, depends on the needs of the participants. And of course, nearly all of these quantities are driven by weather and climate. So if we come back to the previous picture, so for instance, if I am an energy producer, so imagine I own a PV plant, so I have several PV. What I want to do with my PV, of course, it is to sell my electricity. So how can I make more profit with my generation? I would like to optimize my benefit from generations. So maybe to optimize my benefit from generation, I would like to have some reliable forecast of my own generation. Because if I know precisely what will be the production of tomorrow, maybe I can make a good bid on the electricity market. If I am a transmission system operator, for instance, I would like a reliable forecast of the consumptions to balance the grid, because it is my responsibility to balance the grid. If I have a blackout, people will not be happy. So I need to balance the grid, so I need a reliable forecast, and so on. If I am a consumer, a big consumer, so for instance, imagine you have a big industry. So for instance, you produce cars. Your energy consumption may be quite expensive. So you would like to optimize your electricity consumption, but to do that, you need to forecast your consumption. So in fact, for a lot of people, forecasting is really important, even if it is not the true business in itself. If you build cars, you are not, at the beginning, you are not interested in forecasting, but you need some forecast to optimize your benefit. Okay. So now that we have talking about why is it interesting to forecast, in fact, there are a lot of things that you can do once you have some forecast. So it can be used as input to several decision-making problems. And I think that this week you have already seen some decision-making problem because you have already performed optimization problems. So for instance, planning. And I think that when you did some planning, you assume that you had some information about your system. But this information, they come from forecast, in fact. So you do not forecast just for forecasting. You forecast for doing something after that, so for decision-making. And you use your forecast as input of a decision-making model. And your decision-making model, it can be an optimization problem, but it can be also machine learning or whatever. So for instance, when you are in the energy sector, you can do some unique commitment on economic dispatch. So when you are doing some unique commitment, it means that you need to say, okay, tomorrow you will start this plant at this hour and this other plant at this hour. But to do that, you need some reliable information about consumption, production, and so on. And you will run an optimization problem that based on some forecast will take this decision. But it can be also used, for instance, for doing optimal maintenance planning. So for instance, imagine you are EDF. EDF is one of the main energy operator in France, and it owns 56 nuclear power plants. So they do a lot of money with the nuclear power plants, but once a year they need to do some maintenance on the power plants. And so they need to decide when they will shut down the power plant for a short period. And to do that, they need to make some forecast. They need to forecast the consumption, because imagine you have your 56 nuclear power plants, and just like that, okay, I will shut down this one during the winter, this one during the summer, and so on. But if the consumption is high and you don't have enough power plants to balance the consumption, you will have a problem and you will lose a lot of money, and maybe you will have some blackouts. So you need a reliable forecast on the short term and on the long term. Sorry for that. And so I think that now you are getting the fact that sometimes you need very short-term forecasts. So for instance, in the hours ahead, or for tomorrow, or maybe in 1 week, and sometimes you need very long-term forecasts, so for instance in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. And so for instance, EDF, they are doing forecasts up to 5 years ahead to make the optimal maintenance planning. So they know right now which nuclear power plant they will shut down maybe in 5 years. So of course they will adjust the timetable, but they have already a maintenance plan now for that. Okay. So the forecasts are input to decision-making methods. Okay, now we will focus on point forecasting, so deterministic forecast. And in the next lesson, maybe we'll do that in the afternoon. We will see probabilistic forecasts as quantiles and intervals. But you have a lot of different kinds of forecasts. You have also forecasts in the form of trajectories or scenario. We'll see that in the afternoon. But we will not focus on them because I don't have enough time to do that. So right now, we will dive into deterministic forecast. I think you have already seen that in the previous lesson. So if you consider a microgrid, you have, for instance, some generation, renewable generation, so wind turbine, PV plant. You can also have a genset, etc. And you may have also a storage system, and you have a EMS, energy management system, that will optimize the decision based on monitoring and forecasting. So here we focus only on forecasting, but it is just, it is not an end in itself. So I think it was on Tuesday that you have seen planning. So you can see this lesson as the input of the planning. So if you focus on the EMS timeline, you always do before the planning, the forecasting. So you run your algorithm to produce some forecast, and then you use them for the operational planning. So you solve, for instance, an optimization problem. And then based on that, you will have some decision, and you can run a real-time controller, for instance. So there are some key parameters to forecast when you are considering a microgrid. So if you consider the generation, it will be the PV, for instance. And if you consider the load, it depends on your microgrid, but for instance, it could be a residential load. And you can also focus on prices if you're interested also on bidding on the market. Okay. We have an equation at this stage.
No, we don't.
No?
No.
Okay. Okay. So of course, forecast is not forecast is difficult. So when you are doing some forecasting, you are interested in determining what will be your forecast uncertainty or the error of your forecast. And if you consider the input of your forecasting model, most of the time we'll take into consideration previous measurements. So imagine you have a PV plant, you will have some data of your PV plant. So probably you have a monitoring system, and with the monitoring system, you have a database of your previous production. So probably you will use this information to do some forecast. But most of the time, you are also using weather forecast because, as you know, of course, when you have a PV plant, it depends mainly on the sun. If you have no sun, of course, there will be no production. And if you are considering a wind power plant, of course, if you have no wind, there is no production. But you can also consider extra information. So, for instance, off-site measurements, radar image, etc. So every information that is relevant for your forecasting problem. So imagine, for instance, you would like to forecast the consumption of a company. So of course, for instance, the temperature is important because the temperature will have an impact on the heating. But of course, if you know some calendar information, it will be also relevant because you will not have the same consumption on Monday or during a Saturday, because most of the time people do not work on Saturday. Most of the time, of course, in a hospital it is different, for instance. But imagine for a classic company, you have almost nobody on Saturday, so the consumption is most of the time low. So you can consider, for instance, calendar information. So based on all of these inputs to your forecasting model, you can produce some forecast. And in fact, most of the time, the error of forecasting depends on the lead time. So when you are performing a forecast, imagine right now you would like to forecast the production of a PV plant for tomorrow. So right now you run your algorithm, so it produces a forecast for the production of the PV plant tomorrow. You will use a weather forecast and the last measurement. So your forecasting horizon is more than 1 day because you produce right now your forecast for tomorrow. And in the very short term, when you are producing very short-term forecasts, so in the hours ahead, you definitely need measurements because the weather will less impact the forecast. But when you are considering a medium-range forecast, so for instance, the day you had forecasting, so for tomorrow, you will definitely need weather forecast because imagine you are right now monitoring your PV production. You can understand that the PV production right now will be most of the time decorrelated of the PV production of tomorrow. But the PV production in 2 hours is most of the time correlated to the PV production right now. So depending on the forecasting horizons, the forecasting error will depend on the information that you provide to your model. So of course we will use some weather forecasts, and here we are lucky because at the climate laboratory of Liège University they have their own forecasting model. And it produces forecasts for instance, in Belgium, but it can do forecasts in other areas of the world. And so I will show you how it looks like. I need to share something else. Okay. Okay, perfect. So for instance, here I can access the weather forecast at Liège University. And here you have, for instance, the air temperature at 2 meters from the ground in red. So here it is today. And here the model produces the temperature forecast up to 10 days ahead. So it will not be so hot in the coming day ahead. And here, for instance, you have the wind. Here you have the solar irradiation in red. So today it is quite cloudy. But for instance, on June the 7th, it will be quite a nice day, and maybe you can bet on a nice PV production. And here you have the precipitation and so on. So you have different weather forecasting model, and you will use them to produce weather forecasting, and then PV production forecasting. So now I need to come back to the presentation. Where is my presentation? Okay. And so a large part of the prediction error comes directly from the prediction of weather variable, because you use the weather forecast as input of your forecasting model. So of course, if your weather forecasts are not good, at the end, the forecast production will be bad. So it is logical. But the uncertainty, in fact, is amplified or dampened by the power curve. So if, for instance, take into consideration the power curve of a wind turbine. I think that you know that it is the power of a wind turbine is related to the wind speed, but it is related to the cube of the wind speed. So if you have very low wind speed, the production is very low. So of course, if here the forecasting model is bad, it may have a huge impact or not, because imagine you forecast 2 meters per second, but in reality it is 0. Okay, it is almost the same thing. But if you forecast 4 meters per second, but in reality it is 8, you can see the difference. So here you will have a huge error. And here it is even worse. If you forecast 10 meters per second, and that in reality it is 14 or 8, you will have a huge error. But here, if you are here and you forecast 20 and in fact it is 22, it's almost the same thing. So depending on where you are on the power curve, the meteorological forecast is then amplified or dampened. So it is quite important to have reliable weather forecast if you want to produce reliable production forecast. I'll skip this one. Okay. So now let's see the practical setup. So we are here at time t. So for instance, I don't know which time it is. Okay, let's say it is 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. and we would like to, it is 9 a.m. Yes, it is better. It is 9 a.m. and we have a deadline at 11 a.m. We would like to bid on the market. So you have your own PV plant. So you are the owner of that PV plant. So you need to make some money with that because you need to finance this PV plant. And at 11 a.m., you will sell your production on the electricity market. So at 11 a.m., you need to say, okay, tomorrow at this hour, I will produce this amount of energy. And so we are here now at 9 a.m. And so you are interested in what will happen for tomorrow. So when we say the time index K is referred to as the lead time, it is the time at which you would like to perform your forecast. So we are at time t, 9 a.m., and we would like to make the prediction of the PV plant at time t plus k, and t plus k is tomorrow. Tomorrow at 11 a.m., for instance. And so you are interested in making a prediction of the random variable, that is the power generation at time t plus k. You don't know what will be the production at time t plus k. And from a mathematical perspective, it is seen as a random variable. The PV production is modeled as a random variable. And so deterministic forecast, in fact, it is an estimate for time t plus k, conditional to information up to time t, because you have some information, in fact, about your PV plant up to time t. You don't know anything about the future, but you know for sure, for instance, the previous production of your PV plant, because you monitored your production. So you have some information up to time t. Up to time t, for instance, you know that your weather forecasting model will predict something for tomorrow, a certain amount of solar irradiation, of wind speed, etc. But you just know this information up to time t. And at time t, you need to produce a forecast for time t plus k, conditional to some information up to time t. And so this is a point forecast informs, in fact, of the conditional expectation of the power generation. It is conditional up to some information. And it is what it is illustrated here with this mathematical formula. Here with the hat, it is a forecast. So it is a forecast of the PV production or I don't know, the wind generation production. So for instance, you produce this forecast at time t for t plus k. So you produce right now the production right now at 9 a.m. for tomorrow at lunchtime, for instance. And it is equal to the expectation. So the big E is the expectation of the random variable, because you model your PV production or your wind generation as a random variable. So it is the expectation of the random variable conditioned to some information. So you have a forecasting model, a model G, that can be, for instance, a machine learning model. You have an information. So for instance, it can be the previous production that you monitored, or it can be some weather forecast. And you have the parameter of your model. And you have seen, I think it was yesterday, how to estimate parameter from a machine learning model. So you need to optimize your parameter. So this is a point forecast. In the point forecast, you will predict a value for a single lead time. So for instance, you will have one value for tomorrow at 12, another value for tomorrow at 1 p.m., 2 p.m., etc. And here it is, I think, so here you have, with the plain line, the forecast of, I think it was the wind generation. And here you have the observation in comparison, and that you can see that, of course, the first lead times, most of the time, are better predicted than the lead times that are in much more longer horizon. But it is very important to understand that a point forecasting model, it is in the name. In fact, you predict some points. You predict a point, a value of your random variable for each hour, for instance. You don't predict scenario or quantile, etc. You just predict a point, and it is modeled as the expectation of the random variable. So, okay, so we have defined what is a point forecasting model. So you have now your model, that is a model G. And this is what we are interested in, because we would like to perform some good forecasts. So we hope to produce some reliable forecasts. But to do that, we need to have a good forecasting model G. And so there are many, many ways of doing that. So you can use machine learning models. So for instance, neural networks, gradient boosting, random tree, I don't know. There are many, many, many machine learning models. And yesterday you have seen some of them. But also you can use a parametric model. For instance, for PV production, it is well known what is the law, the mathematical law of the PV production. And for a PV plant, the PV production is related, in fact, to the solar irradiation, big A, and the air temperature. So, in fact, if you know exactly the solar irradiation and the air temperature, and if you are able to estimate this coefficient A, B, and C that are related to the PV plant, you can perfectly predict you can perfectly predict your PV production. Or you can use a statistical model, an ARIMA model, for instance, etc. So you have, in fact, many, many, many ways of implementing model G. And depending on your forecasting application or what you intend to do, maybe sometimes you will say, okay, I will use a machine learning model because I know that in this case it is more relevant, it will produce better forecasts. But if for a PV plant, you know exactly the solar radiation, the air temperature, don't bother with a machine learning model. Just take the parametric model, it will be fine. So it completely depends on your application or what you want to do. So let's have a look on an example. So let's consider a point forecast of PV generation. So here we use, in fact, a neural network model. So the model G is a simple neural network. And we perform some day-ahead forecasting. So it means day-ahead, it means one day in advance. So we are here today and we want to produce forecasts for tomorrow. So it is 1 day ahead, And so the PV point forecasts are in black. It is DAD24, meaning a day ahead, 24 hours ahead. And so you have here the point forecast in black. And in red, it is the observation. So in fact, you have to imagine it is not straight line because you have to imagine points, but between the points, I draw some lines. And you have points every 15 minutes. So a day, 1 day, 24 hours, is divided into 96 quarters. So here you have, in fact, 96 points. And the model predicted 96 value of PV production. And here you have 2 different days. And you can see that on the right, where you have a sunny day, it is almost a perfectly sunny day, you have a nice curve. You can see that the forecasting model was quite good because it's almost equals to the observation. But here it was more like not completely a cloudy day or a sunny day, but between the two. And you can see that the model was not so good. Because sometimes, for instance, it says, okay, look, you have some PV production here, but in reality, you have nothing. Okay, and I think that you can easily understand that it will be very difficult for a forecasting model to precisely predict the production when you don't know if it is really sunny or really cloudy. Because in fact, it is quite easy to make prediction if you know for sure that it will be sunny or completely cloudy. It is a high production or low production. But when you don't know, it's very difficult. And it is there that really lies the challenge, in fact. Okay. So now, depending on your applications, maybe you will focus on very short-term forecasting, so from a few minutes ahead to a day, or on short-term forecasting, middle-term forecasting, long-term forecasting. Here today, we will see mainly short-term forecasting. So we will focus on short-term forecasting, but some people are interested in long-term forecasting. So for instance, most of the time, if you want to take a decision for building a new plant, a new PV plant or nuclear power plant, or if you want to take decision at a large scale, you are a grid operator and you would like to know if you will build a new grid, you will need some forecast on the long term. But if you're interested to sell, how to sell your production on the day-ahead market, it is short-term, for instance. So here we will focus on short-term forecasting from a few days ahead, and with a minute resolution. But the people that are interested in long-term forecasting, they don't need a minute resolution. Days or year resolution is fine. And in terms of the spatial dimensions, here we are focusing on a PV plant, so it is more related to the scale of a residential microgrid, for instance. But the people that are interested in long-term forecasting, for example, the grid operator, the spatial dimensions is much more larger. So they will consider gigawatt, for instance. Here we are focusing more on a kilowatt for our PV plant. But depending on your forecasting application, you will completely have different model to do that. So here we will be here today. So day-ahead scheduling. Sorry. Yeah, and you can see that the energy policy planner, for instance, they are interested more in forecasting for a decade ahead. So it's completely different. Okay. So depending on the forecasting problem, we will not do the same thing, and you will not consider also the same predictors. The predictors are the information that you will provide to your forecasting model. So for forecasting the PV production, of course, I think you can understand that we need the solar irradiation, because we know for sure that the PV production is highly correlated to the solar irradiation. If you consider a wind generation plant, for sure you will be interested in knowing the wind speed, because you know for sure that it is related to the wind speed. So depending on the forecasting problem, you will consider different predictors. So here for the PV generation, we will consider the solar irradiation predictors, but also the air temperature. And we will not use the calendar variable. So the calendar variable are the days of the week. But if you would like to perform load forecasting, you will consider calendar variable, because it is important to know if people are working on Sunday or on Monday. It is completely different. The load will be completely different. So it is important, depending on your forecasting application, to make a careful selection of your predictors. Because your model is not magic. It cannot decide what is relevant or not. It is the brain. The brain is not your model. When we are talking about artificial intelligence, it is quite a buzzword in a sense that, okay, it is artificial intelligence, but the intelligence is come from you. It is you that decide what you will provide to your model, and the model, it will just adapt to the information that you provide to your model. So the artificial intelligence, in fact, it comes from you. It is not the model in itself. So you need carefully to select the predictors that you will feed to your model. So if we come back to the example, here to produce this forecast, we use weather forecast as predictor. We use weather forecast of solar irradiation and air temperature. So the predictors of the neural network in this case are the solar irradiation and the air temperature. when I say predictor, in fact, it is the input of the neural network. It is the information that you provide to your neural network. But imagine that you decided to use the wind speed, for instance. You could have also add the wind speed to this predictor, or but you can use, for instance, the relative air humidity. But in this case, we decided just to use solar radiation and temperature. It was not so bad. Okay. Now we will see the last part. So we have seen how to produce point forecast. So it's fine. We produce some point forecasts, but how can we evaluate them? Sorry. It is really important because here we can perform a visual inspection and you can say, okay, here it is good and here it is not so good. Okay, great. But can we do better than that? Can we do better than just saying, okay, it is good, it is bad, just based on visual inspection? I think we can maybe use some metrics to quantitatively assess the quality of the point forecast. Do you have any question? Nope. No question? Okay.
No, it's not a low battery, it's a communication. Yeah, maybe if you have a question, you can go directly. You say hello.
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 Is it this one?
Yep. Yes.
Hello. Good morning. My name is Carlos. I have just one question because in the example it says that the forecast was done at noon of one day to predict the information of the next day. I was wondering if there's a particular reason of this time, or shouldn't it be better to forecast once you have the information of the whole day, let's say after sunset, to decide for the next day?
Yeah, okay. So yes, okay, good question. So let's come back to the different type of forecasting. So what you are saying, in fact, is related to the forecasting horizon. It is, when do I decide to do my forecast? It completely depends on your forecasting application. If you are here and you want to perform day-ahead scheduling, in fact, it is because the day-ahead market, the energy market, they have some rules. And one of the rules is that if you want to bid on this market, you need to do it at a specific time gate. And the time gate is at lunchtime here today. So at lunchtime here today, you have to tell them, okay, I would like to sell this quantity of energy for tomorrow, or I would like to buy this quantity of energy for tomorrow. It is a rule. You have to bid at lunchtime. And after lunchtime, the market is closed. It is like that. So you cannot do, you cannot buy or sell any energy on this market for the day of tomorrow. So that's why you need to perform your forecast before the deadline. And in the case study here, it is what we are interested in. So that's why we decided to make the forecast just before lunchtime and not decided to wait a little bit more. But it completely depends on your forecasting application. Imagine your energy market is different. Maybe the deadline will be at the end of the day. Okay, it's perfect. If it is at the end of the day, it's even better. It's easier to make the forecast. But it is not like that. For the day-ahead market, the rule I love that. It is at lunchtime. And there are some, of course, there are some reasons for that. I will not go into the details of it because they have to run some algorithm and so on. So they have to do something about it. It is not just they receive the order and they cross the fingers. It is not like that. But you have to comply with the rule of your energy market. But you have also, for instance, the intraday market. And the intraday market is completely different because on the intraday market, you can buy or sell energy up to the next quarter. So it means that right now, I can go on the intraday market and buy or sell energy in the 15 minutes ahead. So I can make a prediction in 15 minutes. It's okay, it's fine. But it's a completely different market, and the prices are different. Does it answer to the question?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. Do you have any other question?
Yes, I have another question. Good morning.
Good morning.
My question is related to how you forecast. Yes, my question is related to how you forecast in the case of wind power. So in this one, you have a power curve that affects the actual production in that it is not a linear relationship with the wind, with the resource.
Mm-hmm.
What
Yes.
you do is that I want to know how it works. Do you input the power curve of the specific turbine in the model, or do you just let the machine learning to make the relationship itself?
Mm-hmm. So good question. So let's come back to the slide on the forecasting model. So let's come back to the definition point forecasting. So the definition point forecasting is this one. Okay, great. And so we are interested in learning a model J that will make the prediction. So as I said, you can use a machine learning model, for instance. So imagine a neural network. Or you can use a parametric model and to exploit, for instance, some physical law. So for the PV production, the physical law is this one, but so for the wind generation, it is related to the cube of the wind speed. So you can use a parametric model, and so you don't use at all a machine learning model, and you just fit the coefficient A, B, and C. So for instance, with a linear regression or another order square, I don't know. And in that case, you don't need at all any machine learning model. You just need weather forecast prediction, and you use the weather forecast as the input of your model, and with the law, it will provide you the output of your generation. Or if you use the machine learning model, you have different options, and we will see after that. You can just use as input of your forecast neural network model, for instance, the solar radiation, the air temperature, and maybe you assume that your machine learning model will learn by itself this relation. Or you can help your machine learning model, and you can provide as input of your machine model the solar irradiations, but you can also provide the square of solar irradiation, and you can also provide the air temperature times the solar irradiation, because maybe you assume that it will help your machine model to learn this relation. It depends. And in fact, it completely depends the amount of data you have. In fact, a machine learning model is not magic. The more data you have, the better it learns. And you can understand that it is the same for you. The more data you have, the easier it is to learn. So if you imagine you have several years of data, so for instance, 50 years of PV generation, 50 years of solar irradiation, air temperature, and so on, the machine learning model will learn by itself easily the law. You don't have to provide the law. You just put the solar radiation, the air temperature. It's okay. But imagine you don't have a lot of data, and most of the time in a mini application, you don't have a lot of data. Maybe imagine you have only 2 or 3 months of data. You only have 2 or 3 months of PV generations, solar irradiations, and air temperature. Maybe with 2 or 3 months, the model will not be able to learn this complex law. Well, it is not very complex, but it will not be able to learn that. So maybe to help him to learn that, you will provide him also the square of the solar irradiation, and also the solar irradiation times the air temperature. And this is where, in fact, the artificial intelligence, it also comes from you, because you have to understand, based on the model you are using, what will help him or not, depending on the amount of data you have. So you have to provide some knowledge into your model, and it is completely up to you. Does it answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
He says yes. Professor, I have another question.
Yes.
Consider that we are using a short-term forecasting for tomorrow. Naturally, if we get closer to the time, we can make it more exact forecasting. Do we update our forecast if we get closer to the time, or just leave it like that?
Well, good question. Thank you. So it completely also depends on your application. Let's come back to the day-ahead market model. So you want to bid some energy quantity of the day-ahead market model. Once the deadline is passed, it is finished. The deadline is passed, so you can update your forecast, but the market will say, okay, but it's finished. For tomorrow, it's okay. It's closed. But imagine you are bidding on the intraday market. Here it is completely different because on the intraday market, you can bid for the same timing. You can bid 6 hours ahead, then 4 hours ahead, 3 hours ahead, 2 hours ahead, 1 hour ahead. So you can update your bid, and you can bid again. So here in that application, it is relevant to update your forecast. Or imagine you are doing the control of your microgrid. So you have an algorithm that is taking some action of your microgrid. And so every quarter, it will update the action of your microgrid. Of course, it is interesting to update your forecast, because if you just consider the forecast of the day before, okay, but maybe it's better to take the last forecast. So in that application, it will be interesting to consider the last updated forecast. Is it okay for the answer?
Yes.
Another
Yes,
question?
okay. No.
Someone else?
Great. Oh, you can go, Jonathan.
It's okay. Okay. The last part, and then maybe we can do a short break. Courage. So now let's evaluate the quality of the forecast, and then you will have a small coffee break. I hope a quality, good coffee break. So let's consider the Liège University case study. So here at Liège University, we have some PV over the parking rooftops. Here you have the picture, and under there are the cars. And so we use some data of this PV plant. And so this is the data that you will use in exercise after that. So let's consider, as forecasting model G, a feed-forward neural network. But let's consider a very simple one. So let's consider a feed-forward neural network with only one hidden layer. Let's consider as input of this model the solar radiation and the earth temperature as input. So here you can see that I did not provide the square of the solar radiation. I just provide the solar radiation and the earth temperature. So I assume that the model maybe will learn the mathematical law that is that you have seen before. And so the output layer of this model is composed of 96 neurons, because I would like to make the prediction of the PV generation for an entire day. So, and that day is divided into 96 quarters, so 96 time steps, and it is implemented in Python. So you have several ways of evaluating your model, and so several strategies, and I think that you have seen that in the lesson yesterday. So one way is to split your data set into a training and a validation part. So here in green, you have your training part, and you use this data to train your model. So the model will learn on this part, and then you use the last part that is known as the validation part, and you perform your prediction on that part, and you evaluate your model on this part. So this is one strategy. But you have also another strategy that is known as the K-cross validation. And I think Bertrand, I think you already explained that yesterday.
Yes, quickly, yes.
So they already know that. So you divide your data set into K pairs of random learning and validation part, and at the end you will have 10 validation sets. So you can average your score on 10 validation sets. So the K-cross validation is quite nice because you will evaluate your model on almost the entire data set. But to do that, you need to do the first strategy, you need quite a big data set. And when you are using the K-cross validation, it is quite useful when you have a small data set. So then, as quality metric, of course, you can use your eyes, so visual inspection, and it's quite good to use your eyes. And I strongly encourage you first, before doing any complex calculation, just to have a look on the forecast, because most of the time people, they produce a forecast and they don't have a look at them. They compute some scores and they say, okay, it's good, bad, okay, but they don't have just a look at them. And just by using your eyes, you will get an insight of if your forecasts are good or bad quality. So what do you think of these two? Are they good or are they bad? It is a true question. I expect an answer.
Well, the first one, so maybe it was cloudy. It's very cloudy.
The one on the right is good.
Right is good, huh? Yes, okay. And the one of the left? No, not good. Bad. Nice. Okay. So for sure, we can say on the right it is quite good. On the left, it is more difficult to say because here, okay, it's bad, but sometimes it is not so bad. So it depends. But here it depends. It is difficult to say if it's good or bad. So maybe here we need some other quality metrics. So after you have performed the visual inspections, you can do a little better than that because typical errors are most of the time driven by weather forecast. So you can have, for instance, an amplitude error. So here we underestimate the production. So we have the right shape, but we underestimate the production. Maybe here, for instance, the solar irradiation weather forecast was a little bit too low. Or you can have phase error. It means your amplitude is quite good, but it is shifted in time. So here you have a shift. And then you have the quantitative metrics. And the first one to compute, of course, it is a forecast error, and it is defined as the difference between the observation minus the forecast. And then you can normalize this forecasting error by, for instance, the nominal capacity of your plant. So let's have a look here on a wind farm. So you have the observation with a small point. You have the forecast in black. So if here we perform visual inspection, what can you say? Do you have typical error, the one like that? So here you can have amplitude error or phase error. And here, what do you think you have?
Phase error.
Phase error, of course, yes. So here you can see that it is good, it is good, it is good, and then you have a kind of phase error. So you can say that by visual inspection. And probably here the weather forecasts are the reason of this. But you cannot say much more than that by doing visual inspection. And then if you compute this one, so the forecasting error, so the normalized forecasting error, here you have the normalized forecasting error. So here, of course, it is quite good. And here at the lead time around 18, it is where it started the shift. And you can see that the normalized error is increasing. And then it comes back almost to 0. And then you have several quantitative metrics that you can compute based on this forecasting error. So the first one is the bias. Then you have the mean absolute error, or the normalized mean absolute error if you normalize your mean absolute error by the capacity, for instance. And you have also the root mean square error, or the normalized root mean square error for the normalized version. And most of the time when you are considering point forecast, you will compute the mean absolute error and the root mean square error. These two metrics are really, really important. So let's have an example here. And so this is the case study of the PV parking rooftop of Liège University. We have 3 different forecasting models. The one in blue is a multi-layer perceptron. It is a feed-forward neural network. So here it is a neural network. In red, it is a long short-term memory. It is a recurrent neural network. So it is a neural network, but a little bit more smarter than this one. Let's say let's say a thing like that. And the green dot is a gradient boosting regressor. So you have 3 different models, and they make some prediction of on the case study. And here I computed the root mean square error, the normalized root mean square error, and the normalized mean absolute error. So the plain line are the normalized absolute error, and the dashed line are the normalized root mean square error. So they are expressed in percentage because the error are normalized by the total PVN capacity. And here on the x-axis, it is the lead time. So I average the score over several days of the data set, and I compute the error per lead time. So your day is divided into 96 time steps, 96 quarters, and I computed the average error per time step. So of course, during night hours, it is 0, because it's easy for the model to predict the PV production during the night, it is 0. So that's why here there are no lead time between 1 and 10, and no lead time after 80, because it is during the night, so it is 0. And here it is during the day at lunchtime. And so you can see that the best model, for instance, here, in terms of normalized mean absolute error, it is the red one. Then you have the blue one, and then the green one. And in terms of normalized root mean square error, it is also the same. You have the LSTM that is the best. Then you have the MLP and the gradient boosting regressor that are almost equal. And so here it is an example to show you what are quantitative metrics. Sorry, let's come back to that. And the difference between, do you know the difference between the mean absolute error and the root mean square error? Have you already seen that or not?
Again, can maybe repeat it? I don't really know what you have in mind, but maybe you can say it, Jonathan.
Okay, because in fact it is quite important to understand that here you have the definition of the mean absolute error. When you are considering the mean absolute error, it will provide you some knowledge about the average error. But when you are considering the root mean square error, here you have a square. And so this quantity will be very sensible to outliers. So it means that you can have very, very good prediction. So most of the time, imagine your prediction is quite similar to the observation, but sometimes you have some outliers. This one will be high. This score will be high, and it will tell you if your model has some outliers, because the mean absolute error will not see that. It will not be sensible to outliers. So they are complementary metrics, in fact. So it means that you may have a model with a very, very good mean absolute error. So it means a very small mean absolute error. But this model may have some outliers, and you will have a high root mean square error. So it is important to compute both metrics because they are complementary. And the goal is to have these both metrics with very low scores, very small values. Okay, so let's conclude for this introduction to point forecasting. So forecasting is a natural step to decision making. We use forecasting to take decision. And when you are considering a microgrid, the key parameters to forecast may be PV generation, wind generation, etc. It can be also the consumption, or you can consider, for instance, the electricity prices on different time scale. A forecast, in fact, it is an estimate that you produce at time t for time t plus k based on some information, some knowledge you have of your system up to time t. And the point forecast informs you on the conditional expectation of the power generation. So it is in fact an average of your random process. So it will produce you only a single value per hour, for instance. And to do that, you need a forecasting model, a model G. You need some information, so the PV generation, weather forecast, etc. And you need to estimate the parameter of your model. You have several strategies to assess the forecast. You can split your data set into a training part and the validation set part. So let's say this option. Or you can use a k-cross validation, for instance, if you have a small data set. Like that, you will have a larger validation part. Then once you have adopted your evaluation strategy, you can use some quantitative metrics. I strongly encourage you to use the mean absolute error and the root mean square error when you are considering point forecasting. And of course, you can do some visual inspection. If you want to learn more from other references, I really encourage you to have a look at this chapter that is free. And in fact, it comes from this book that is really good to understand the renewable in the electricity market. And here you have also the planning problem and so on, but the chapter 2 is only about forecasting. And you have also the online lesson from Pierre Pinson. Pierre Pinson is quite the god in forecasting. In the forecasting area, this is the guy. So mainly, if you want to learn on forecasting, you can have a look on his lesson. I can show you quickly. Can you see my screen? No. Okay, so here it is a website of Pierre Pinson, and his lessons are free and online in open access. So you have lesson on renewable in electricity market, and here you have different modules where you can learn a lot of things on the electricity market, and you have some module on energy forecasting. So here module 8, 9, and 10. So for instance, if we take module 9, it is the first step for forecasting renewable energy. And you have some video. I think it is loading, it takes some time. But you have a module introduction, and then you have the generalities, the benchmark, etc. And he's quite a good speaker, a much more good speaker than me in English. And you have also the presentation. So this guy is really good. If you want to learn forecasting, let's have a look on the lesson of this guy. It is free and online. Okay. So the first lesson on the introduction of forecasting is done. Maybe you can have a short break. I don't know.
Oh yes, let's have a break of about 10-15 minutes, and then we'll come back for the practice part.
Yep. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Tu restes connecté ou on peut laisser le truc en marche, hein, c'est plus facile.
Oui, de toute façon, ouais, on peut laisser. Je vais couper mon micro et puis voilà, c'est pas un problème.
Mon micro ici. On va bientôt recommencer, ils sont en train de rentrer progressivement. Dans 2-3 minutes, on peut y aller.
Ça marche.
Cherchez un verre d'eau. Pour le soir.
Il n'y avait pas des lags quand je parlais dans la présentation, non?
Des quoi?
Il n'y avait pas des lags de connexion quand je parlais? J'ai l'impression d'avoir un décalage de temps, non?
Non, ça va, ça allait encore.
On m'entendait?
Oui, on t'entend, oui, il n'y a pas eu de problème. Hein.
Ok, ok.
Mais, ouais. Collaborate me dit que j'ai un problème de connexion, mais je comprends pas pourquoi, parce qu'on j'ai toutes les barres de Wi-Fi et ça a l'air d'aller.
Ouais, ah oui, j'avoue, c'est vrai. Ouais.
Non, non, c'est en endurable. Enfin, attends,
C'est en montant, pas en descendant que ça dit ça. Je pense que c'est sur l'upload, mais c'est pour ça que vous me recevez bien, mais c'est vrai que moi j'avais du mal à vous recevoir parfois.
Ouais, je sais pas.
Comme ça.
Ouais, j'ai peut-être coupé la caméra parce que ça sert pas à grand chose d'un côté.
Ouais, non,
Je vais couper notre caméra parce que.
Question, mais pour l'instant.
Salman, tu sais faire le truc Okay, everyone. So let's restart for the second part of this morning. So you will have to start your Python. So this assignment is not. Jonathan did not plan to make it in a Google Colab, so it's a plain Python